Hello there, and welcome to the world of League. My name is Cryozar. Some people may call me Professor Cryo. This world is inhabited by creatures called champions. And for some people, these champions are icons, people they look up to. And for others, they use them for fights. Myself, I study the champions as a profession. So, let me think. Oh, that's right. I told you to come. Just wait real quick here, my student. So, there are 3 champions here. They're inside these Pokeballs. And when I was young, I was a very serious champion abuser. If it wasn't 56% win rate, I wasn't playing it. But now in my old age, I only play 3 people. So I'm gonna let you choose one of them. So you wanna pick the champion Talon. He primarily goes mid and jungle. But sometimes you might see him in the top lane if you're going really spicy. Let's get into it. So Talon is a melee assassin who primarily goes in the mid lane or the jungle. His damage is primarily attack damage, or AD for short, and he mostly builds lethality. So with that being said, Talon does still need some other things sometimes. Now there's the occasional item he needs for survivability, and whether that's GA or Hex Drinker, you have those options, or you can go down the completely opposite path. Instead of his traditional lethality based, you can go down his secondary based bruiser build, which a lot of people do opt to pick. And with that, you're going to want to pick that into a more tankier comp than instead of your lethality. But if it's more of a squishier comp, your traditional tank, bruiser jungle, mage mid, ADC, and support of some sort, then you can go lethality. So now you're on your way to becoming a champion master. But hold your horses. I think next we want to go ahead and break down his passives and abilities, and then we want to break down how he plays the field during the different phases of the game. So this is Talon. This champion specializes in getting up close and personal while also being able to get away quickly and efficiently. Talon's passive is Blade's End. Every time Talon hits an enemy, champion, or large monster with an ability, he gains a stack. After 3 stacks, he's able to pop said stacks with his auto attack to do a large amount of burst damage. Talon's Q, which is Noxian Diplomacy, allows Talon to leap from a distance or to critically melee strike his target while also applying a stack. Talon's W is Rake. So Talon can throw a fan of daggers in a cone, and these do damage to enemies hit at a maximum range. These daggers sit there for a little under a second, and after that they come back to Talon. Both hits of this will give you a stack, as well as the returning angle of it will slow the enemy down. Now it doesn't show it on a target dummy, of course, but please believe that. Next, Talon's E, Assassin's Path. Talon's E, Assassin Path, allows him to dash over units that are terrain. So this tower right here I can jump over, this nexus I can jump over, etc, etc, etc. Every wall you can pretty much jump over. Now there will be some wonky walls around the map that don't always work the way you would want it to, but it is there. While in his jumping animation, you can place a ward, so if you want to jump over a wall really quick and you want to check out Tribush, you can do that. Lastly, Shadow Assault, Talon's R. Talon disperses a ring around him, and during this time, the rings will go out and apply a passive stack and come back in and apply another passive stack. Now they will linger there for about 2.5 seconds, during which he'll sit there and he'll have invisibility. He won't be able to show up in wards, but if somebody has a red trinket, they can see your outline, or if you have some sort of stack on you, i.e. like a Leandry's burn or a bleed, they can see you in your ghost state. And he also gains bonus movement speed. So typically what will happen is you'll press R, you get the invisibility state, you also get the bonus movement speed. And yeah, that's Talon's base kit. Now Talon runs about 2 different rune sets generalistically. He can run others, but these are the 2 primary, and the 2 primary are going to be an Electrocute build and a Conqueror build. Now the Electrocute build is more for your Assassin Burst, and his Conqueror build is more for wanting to take the fights a little bit longer and stay in a little bit longer because you're fighting a little bit more of a tankier team comp. So generalistically speaking, Electrocute is for more squishy and Conqueror is for more tanky. And now with all that being said, let's get into some gameplay. Alright, so the laning phase for Talon is about a couple things. So all you really want to do is get started is farm up. You want to hit some CS, and then there's a couple different options you can go down. And that is, one, you can try to kill your laner, because that's the priority. You know, we get 25% of first bloods for a reason. Granted, not in this clip, of course. And for two, you can roam down to the bot lane and run it back on them, and you can go from there. So, let's see those.
An enemy has been slain.
Alright, made it through the early game. We're going into the mid game now, and I like to think that the separation between the early game and the mid game is about an item, or when most people kind of stop playing the lane phase. So somewhere in that range, usually it's about an item, half an item plus boots. Somewhere in there, people kind of stop caring about specifically their lane. Typically, it's somewhere around 100 CS as well, like 10 minutes is my mentality for the transition. 8 to 10 minutes transition out of the early game to the mid game. Right. So the objectives are pretty important. Talon does a pretty good job of securing towers, at least. I think he's a pretty good split pusher as well. When you kind of just have the time to do it, you can delete towers while being able to get away pretty quickly with his Assassin's Path, his E ability, and if people come after you, you also have your R and your Q to kind of juke them out sometimes, but, you know, sometimes it doesn't work. Right. Talon also in the mid game does this really good thing of sneaking around and doing dumb shit you know you shouldn't be doing, but it sounds like a really good idea in your head. But if it works, you look so cool, and if it doesn't, you just wasted your time and your team's time. So team fights are about going into the back line and killing a priority target and getting out. Unless you're me and the 3-man rate look too good to pass up. I mean, just rewind and look back at it like, come on, let's talk about it. Lastly, in the late game, your dragons can kind of help change the pace, whether that's speeding it up or slowing it down for you and your team, because you, yourself as Talon, do a really good job at taking dragon. With your Q that does the melee crit and melee range, and your passive that allows you to kind of burst it down a little bit with the bleed, you're a very good dragon taker. I always suggest that you go and help your jungler out and take the dragon if possible. Secondly, your Baron. Baron is pretty good at ending the game, as well as kind of stalling if you're behind. So if you can take out the enemy jungle and one other target, usually I say the Baron's a pretty big deal to go after. If your team has more than one brain cell, I can group up after you set up for the Baron. So I mean, in our case, I didn't do that when we took out the 2 targets, but it doesn't matter. And lastly, when you're looking at the late game team fights, you're mostly kind of hanging out on the shadow, like on the sides, and kind of waiting to see if you can jump in to just kind of get your priority targets. Sometimes that's your mid laner, sometimes that's your ADC, sometimes that's the jungler, sometimes it's the top laner. It's just dependent on you, the enemy champions, and who's carrying their team, and who can you kill, of course. So I've told you all I know about this. If you have any further questions, don't worry, I will always be here in the comments. Come see me sometime and subscribe. I want to know how your Leaguedex is coming along.